A former poet laureate of the state of Washington says about our next guest that she contains multitudes. Scientific writer, art scholar, social activist, historical enthusiast, and well published poet. Priscilla Long is a Seattle based poet, writer, editor, and longtime independent teacher of writing. Her new book, Holy Magic, won the 2020 Sally L. Biso Poetry Book Award and was published by Moonpath Press. Priscilla Long is our guest via Zoom today to talk about Holy Magic, poetry postcards, and other topics, no doubt. Priscilla, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Paul. It's great to be here. And thank you for all that you do in this, our region for poetry, including, the postcard poetry, including a lot of other things. So thanks.
Thanks for thanking me in your book.
You're welcome.
I had no idea that was in there. It's fun to see. Your title comes out of an obscure Wallace Stevens poem. In fact, searching for it online, it was described as obscure, and finding it online, which I thought would be easy, was harder than it should have been. So tell us what Holy Magic means to you.
It really means what poetry is to me. I mean, what it means to I'll quote the Wallace Stevens quote about holy, that has holy magic in it. Let wise men piece the world together with wisdom, or poets with holy magic. Heidi ho! I love that. Heidi ho! Ha ha! Heidi ho! Ha ha! But that is to me holy magic. That's the essence of poetry. I don't know what else to say about it. Don't you think?
Well, yes, I think that there is that, but what do you mean by magic? I mean, you're going to pull a rabbit out of a hat, or you're going to saw a woman in half, or I mean,
well, you sort of do pull a rabbit out of a hat. I mean, you don't know, as you're composing, or whatever you call it, you're composing a poem, you don't know what will come. And it is to me, it is, to me, it's part music, which is very magical. So like, how does this some beautiful tune or musical piece, how does it, strike us so deeply? And so poetry, to me, it is from it's kind of a combination of inner and outer. So it's like we're receiving from the outside world, both just what's directly in front of us, like colors, but also, of course, from all the media and the politics and whatever, all the wildfires, we smell, and I'm in Seattle, so I smelled the smoke. I did not see the flames, but the flames are very much in my mind, as they burn. And I don't have to run from them like some friends did. But anyhow, so so when you just work on it, and it starts taking a shape, it is kind of magical. Because I mean, you can't predict it. You can't prescribe it, right? You can't, like medicine or like a prescription here, and then that's what you get. It doesn't work like that. It's kind of magical.
For you, but there are people who are writing formal poems who know what a sonnet's ending couplet's going to be before they start writing. But I'm hearing that's not the way you operate.
I can definitely write into a form, but even if you write in fact, not actually, not so, I do occasionally write in a form, especially the villanelle I am fond of, but even so, even if you're writing into a form, you don't know what it's going to say. I mean, I write a lot of nonfictions into forms. So I'm talking out of that experience where you can write a triptych or a diptych, and that's a form, but yet what you put into it is still, you know, you're cooking it. It's like cooking. It's like cooking by even with a form. I mean, if you're cooking, it's not exactly like cooking with a recipe where you are told exactly what, you know, you would be told exactly what words to put, but you're still cooking in a saucepan or a skillet or whatever. So you're cooking. So people that are great cooks, which I certainly don't include me, I mean, it is kind of magical because they go, oh, here, I'll put this. And it's a little like that. Even I think even I mean, I don't know about knowing what the last couplet of a sonnet. I don't think I've ever done that exactly, but still, you don't know. You have a drift, or you might have a drift. You might start with something, you know. I mean, there's different ways of doing it. You might start with a line, or you might start with just a something you see or something like that. But, or you might kind of have a drift and then you start shaping and, you know, and see what happens. And so, yeah, so even, you know, I don't think that working informal, even though I don't do too much of it, I do a little bit of it, enough to know that I think that's still magical too, because you don't know what your poem is going to be. Every poem is different. And it's important not to be imitating the culture. You can imitate a form. I mean, you can take a form and use the form, but it's important not to me, it's important. I think for poets, it's important not to, I think we all have cliches. We're all full of cliches. And it's important to get beyond those cliches, because cliches are, you know, they're just, you know, the television words or the newspaper words or the Twitter words, or, I mean, so it's important to get deep as you can as you work through. I mean, you can put any word down, you know, that's fine. But as you get to the real poem, you eliminate those which are kind of what I call received, what do I call it? Received conventional diction, I think is what I call it.
Sounds like a poetry teacher to me.
Well,
You had a drift when you had the idea for this book, and that drift led you into organizing by color.
yeah, yeah.
Can you talk about that drift and how it developed and how you thought about it?
Well, so first of all, I always I always do several writing projects at the same time. So at the same time that I'm writing color poems, I mean, I honestly forget how I got into color because it was a long time ago. I mean, I don't remember. I've always loved the visual arts, you know, and especially paintings, as old fashioned as painting may be. I love paintings, you know, and part of it is the color. I mean, colors have huge effects on us. You know, red, I mean, that red room in the Seattle Public Library downtown, if you've ever been in that. And some librarian told me, I don't know if this is true or not, but some librarian told me whenever somebody freaks out in the library and help has to be called, it's often in the red room.
I believe you get off the elevator on it. What is it? The third floor of the downtown library, and it
Yeah,
feels like you're getting off into somebody's intestines.
I know, it's right. That's right. It's like, whoa, it's all red. It's completely red. And actually, I emailed them about it, and it's several different paint colors. And so, so so at the same time that I'm writing color poems, I'm writing pieces on colors, on prose pieces on colors, and finding, you know, and I'm looking up the science. I know this, you know, the science, which is very interesting because the way we see colors is, I mean, so colors don't exist in the outside world. What exists is, you know, is wavelengths that are hitting on things, and our brain turns a long wavelength into red. There is no red out there. What is out there is a long wavelength. So in a sense, that's like poetry to me, because it's like both inner and outer at the same time. something is coming in, but we are transforming it and seeing it in this specific way. And who knows, if one person sees red the same way as another person. I mean, I mean, it's color blindness is very interesting. And I have all these color pieces and I have all these color poems, and I know this colorblind person. I think I'm going to ask him to read them, and because to try to communicate, because it was interesting to talk to him. He's a writing teacher in Eastern Kentucky where I was, and he does not see red. And so I'm thinking, my God, what is he, when he reads one of my red poems or the piece called The Color Red, what does he see? And he does see apparently something. Red is brighter to him. There's something bright. I don't know. It's hard to translate, but I think different people do see colors differently anyhow, but they still powerfully affect us. So, you have prisons painted. I don't know what they're painted now, but they were painted in this horrible green. I always think of it as prison green because it's supposed to be calming. It doesn't calm me down at all. It upsets me. But anyway, but colors. And then I think it was Kandinsky, I think, or somebody like that. Anyway, who thought a lot about color as well as used a lot of color. I think it was Kandinsky who said no one would think of the color yellow as having a low sound, which is interesting, which is probably true. And blue is low. And who knows what red is? But so in some way, and there are these kind of a little bit dogmatic opinions about color, that certain artists had back when, that yellow was either feminine or masculine. I mean, I can't remember which I think is like, yeah, sure. But it is true that, colors affect us very greatly. And color is very interesting. And also, color words have certain sounds. So, like blue, and then so like the emotional connection between blue and the blues. We have the blues, we play the blues. We don't have the greens. We might have some people have the word the reds or something like that, meaning like anger or fury or something like that.
Seeing red.
Seeing red, yeah, exactly. Seeing red.
And your friend who can't see red, that might be a very admirable quality during something like a Trump administration, the inability to see red.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I'm going to ask him.
Have you seen red yet? If you don't see red now, you never. Red also in the system of chakras, red representing the first chakra and being about issues of survival and existence, and red, of course, also being the color of stop signs and stoplights. So, and green, of course, green with envy. So we associate these colors with different emotions, and very ancient systems had a sense of these different colors. Yellow being related to the solar plexus chakra, for instance, and being about self-worth issues. The phrase or the feeling you had when you with the first poem of this book, I'd love for you to read Art and Life and give us a sense, maybe read it first and then give us a sense of what drift, I think was the word that you used when you feel a poem coming on. So that's on page 5.
Okay. Let's see here. Oh, I should read it now.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Okay. Art and Life. Art saves nothing. And this is not art, just words running in lines, hoping to reach redemption. Meanwhile, time is running out for bat and bob white, damselfly and butterfly. Coral reefs are dying and salmon, once wild, breed in tubs. Don't put your hopes in poems that plot the putrid doings of bankers that bank on Franz Marc's red horses, gambling and grazing, as if we'd never learned to fabricate glue from hooves. But look, the peregrines are back, startling starlings into masterpiece murmurations.
So we see a book title, Holy Magic, and we hear, I mean, whether or not we hear your explanation, we think, oh, this has got possibilities. And the first thing you say is art saves nothing. It's a contradiction in the very first line. Are you large? Do you contain? Well, you know what Todd Marshall said, you contain multitudes. So I guess you contradict yourself. Very well, then you contradict yourself.
Yes, I do. Well, you know, when I first did that poem, and all of it is true, right? I mean, in the sense that the world, the extinction crisis, poetry is not really helping. Let's put it that way. And when I first wrote that poem, it did not have. I just, you know, I just, I mean, and I think what's that? The Seattle. Paul Constance online magazine.
Seattle, the former Seattle Review of Books.
The former Seattle Review of Books published it without the last, which was my first version, without the last 3 lines. But look, and I just thought, we cannot go, we just can't have no hope. It doesn't work. There is hope. I mean, the peregrines are back. The peregrine falcons were close to extinction, very close to extinction. There was like 2 left in the state of Washington. I mean, and because of DDT, I think it was, and they're back, you know, and the peregrines have, you know, taken up all the peregrine space in Seattle is taken. You know, another peregrine cannot come in because they're very territorial. Like, you come into my space, you're dead.
Until peregrine gentrification, you know, then we have.
Well, that's right.
They'll move to Kent or something.
That's right. But it's really so there's so many people, like even now in our horrible crises, that are on the right side and working for good values and working for, you know, and also writing postcard poems. And so I think I just thought, no, that's too much. It's true. And you know, Franz Marc's Red Horses, do you know Franz Marc's?
I do not know that painting.
Oh man, I mean, you have to just look it up. I mean, it's just, these are beautiful. They're part of German expressionism, and they're these gorgeous horses. I mean, just, I can't tell you, they're just gorgeous. And he has blue horses and red horses, and they're just beautiful. So I think that despite all the crisis that we're in, we're in this horrible political crisis, but we're also in this ecological crisis. And then we get fires, you know, and it's part of it. But and then we get the virus, and it's kind of like we're getting battered by a lot, and the, you know, racism and the violence and everything. It's just like but I don't think we can just lie on the floor, you know. I don't think that's very helpful. And I think there are lots of reasons for hope, even if I'm deluded. I think I need this hope in order to function. And part of the hope is that there's beauty in the world. There's our human, no matter how screwed up we are as humans. I mean, we have beauty, and we make beauty with our art. So, I don't think I think if you just say, oh, this is so beautiful and lovely, and just ignore everything that's happening, that's not going to work either. That's not poetry either. I mean, poetry gets everything. I mean, I don't think it's a political pamphlet. I mean, I think I have nothing against political pamphlets, but I think poetry can be very political. I mean, certainly, but it's different from a political pamphlet.
It's deeper. That it's a deeper gesture than rhetoric, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's perfectly expressed. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a purpose to rhetoric. I mean, there's a I mean, I'll go out on a demonstration or whatever, but I used to be a political activist, meaning addressed envelopes and made phone calls and that sort of, and, um, and, um, and so I have written, political pamphlets, and they need to be well written. They need to be convincing, and they need to be, accurate and fair and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, the poetry, it really does go a lot deeper. That's, I think, why we love poetry, that it goes into the very center of your being. And that is not to exclude these things. But it just, I don't know how else to express it, but you did perfectly.
Well, you also, sort of validated the reason why there's a perceived sort of contradiction in the poem, because, and especially the story about having a version of art and life for Paul Constant in the late Seattle Review of Books, and then adding the three lines, which is going into the Starlings and their amazing sky ballet, which can arrest you for minutes. I mean, I've seen videos online, 5-8 minutes long. It's just stunning to see their ballet of morphic resonance in the sky. So right there in the poem, art saves nothing, but you're hoping in a way with a poem like this that someone will have a little hope from it. So it is saving something. So there's contradictions all through this, and you can't have that in rhetoric. Rhetoric has to be, our side is great and this is why, and send money now, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's right. That's right. There was at one time I was in a part of this organization called CISPACE, which was,
Citizens in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador.
Thank you. And there were, and there was a emergency response if someone was imprisoned or being tortured. Actually, there was this network where if someone was actually being tortured, there would be, thousands of letters would hit whoever the president. And so they didn't like that, even though they were the torturers, I mean, they did not like that. So there was this rapid response network, and I would be responsible for a while, I was responsible to write the letter to everyone, and it would just go out. And so I really worked on my writing there. And at one point I thought humor would be good. Because it would, but it was, so anyway, so I think there's a skill to it, which I'm not sure I attained.
What would be an example? I mean, this is going back 40 years, so maybe you can't pull it up.
But I can't possibly remember.
Pull up how you might have humor in addressing torturers who were taught at the School of the Americas, no doubt.
That's right.
And then lovingly reenacted by Carolyn Forche in her poem about the
And so she certainly casts a light as a witness. And I'm not sure I've ever just been able to do witness poems like that. I mean, that she is just terrific. But anyway, someone told me, listen, I think that this letter to us all shouldn't have humor in it. So it's like, oh, okay, you're right. But so all kinds of writing is good, but in poetry you have to get to some sort of depth of, and including ambivalence and including just whatever is there. And it's not like even writing into a form or not into a form, it's not predicted. I mean, if you're writing a letter trying to be persuasive, you sort of know what you have to say, sort of. I mean, you still don't exactly, you still have to try it and work on it and stuff. But with a poem, you can hit places where you weren't able to predict what was there.
Mm-hmm. I don't think very many people would be able to look at a book called Holy Magic and think off the bat, there's probably a poem about pee in the book. I think that would be a surprise. And yet there it is on page 42. I think maybe hearing it and
Okay.
then discussing it would be best if you'd be so kind.
Sure.
I hope it doesn't. Never
This is
mind.
my
I won't.
favorite poem. No.
Isn't your, it's going to piss some people off. You know that.
And I do have to tell you this scientific fact. I should probably tell you after the poem, but
Okay.
I'll tell you right now, this scientific fact. Urine is pure when it leaves the body. It is sterile and pure. And that's why we should use it in our gardens. Okay. End of pamphlet.
Next time I get drunk and get caught peeing in the garden, I'll have a built-in excuse.
Well, you have to dilute it. But anyway. Okay. Ars Poetica. The common yellow of urine, not used like moons in poems, not overdone, odoriferous, despite its daily stream. Despite Duchamp, urine's uncommon in art. Yet, why not put urine in? Let it pour from the body's urn, its color of cardamom, saffron, lemon, its ochre steam, its humble animal origin. We look up to logic, spirit, thought, but urine's sterile and pure. Its potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus could fertilize our fields, ground our airy poems.
These little known scientific facts, I guess, do they, do you, I mean, you were described by Todd Marshall as a scientific writer and you wrote for, was it Scientific American?
No, I wrote a science column for 2 years where I always tried to put for the American Scholar online. They're
American
still up.
Scholar,
You can
that's
see
right.
them.
That's right.
Yeah, and I did one on urine. Yeah, in fact, I did two on toilets, which is a very important subject. but yeah, and so and yeah, and I do fertilize my garden with my urine. Just for your information.
Well, I think that was the mental picture we were all coming for today, Priscilla. Thank you for that. How does that, so, so you write a scientific article on on human urine, and then 3, 4 years later, it shows up as a poem, or can you take us through the process? Because I think it's fascinating. And by the way, it's the best urine poem I've ever read.
Oh, thank you. Have you? Are there others?
Well, that's besides the point.
Oh, okay. Oh. I don't know how to answer because I'm always working on several projects at once. And when I have, I have, a fair, I don't know, I can't overgeneralize, but in the previous book, Crossing Over, I have a lot of bridge poems, for example. And, bridges like, the Aurora Bridge and the other bridges. And those poems, for example, I have always, for historylink.org, the online encyclopedia for Washington State history, I have written a number of, encyclopedia essays on the bridges. So the poem, and so in that case, the poem comes later because I always know the engineering. The engineering in those poems is correct. And it's different for different bridges. And that's because I did a bunch of research and wrote the encyclopedia piece. And then somehow I wrote and I went to the bridges and all that. But so I don't know how to answer because I do work on different projects at the same time. And so how one feeds into the other, I'm just not sure how that happened. Usually I'm doing, I think I could say that usually I'm doing research on the prose piece. And then I have the research for the poem that I don't have to further research for the poem because I already have it. So I think so, but I'm not really sure because I not only do I work on several pieces and at the same time, but I really advocate that poets do that because you're and other kinds of writers as well as poets because you can be writing a book. There's so many people writing books and they just are getting stuck and then they're just stuck. And there's ways around that, but um, you know, I've done a lot of research on very high level creators, and they all work on several things at once all the time, because you can work on this and then, okay, and I don't really know it, and then you move to the other thing and you work on that, and that they feed each other. I mean, they stimulate and feed each other. So it's a handy little thing. I mean, I do it. I think I don't do it because I found out it was a good idea, but my first book was a history of coal mining in the United States. It took me 20 years. And if I had not been working on my poetry at the same time, my poetry, I wouldn't have it, you know. So I didn't really have a choice. And so, but then now I've done a lot of like study of high level creators and all kinds of creators, and they pretty much all, they were you know, I mean, most of them work on several things at once. So
The late poet Michael McClure told me he gets writer's block about 6 or 7 times a day.
yeah.
Right. So that I think, alludes to the situation you're talking about. The other thing that comes to mind when you talk about your process, um, is the notion of not thinking of the individual poem, but thinking of the book. So thinking in terms of seriality. Is that how it works for you? You sit down and it's already a project, and it happens to be about colors, or tell me about how that, if that's true.
Well, I think now, finally, at last, it's becoming a little more like that. But no, one thing I think is really interesting. Like um, I have a list of the poems I've written with their date, the title, just the titles. I also have them in 3-ring binders, and in order. And there's 637, I think. And so what's interesting to me is, first of all, putting together a book is very, very interesting, as you know. Um, and uh, and what's interesting to me about putting together a book like this is, I wasn't, first of all, there's some very recent poems in here and very old poems. And hopefully you can't tell the difference. But when now I'm working on a book where I'm actually for the first time, I'm kind of writing into it. It's called Somewhere Nowhere Here, Cartographies of Home. So it's very big, a broad title. I love that title. Even if nothing else, I'm going to publish the title. Here's the title, but it's mine. You can't take it. But anyway, but it's broad enough. But usually I haven't, I haven't, I haven't been writing into, I write color, excuse me, I write color poems because I like colors. And, and Sierra Nelson is a poet around here, and she actually teaches a course in writing color poems. So I took that, and that was fun. And Sierra Nelson comes to class, dressed in the color we're going to do. So yellow day, everything she's wearing is yellow, which I think is funny. But anyway, so color's been a long time, project. But so it's hard for me to answer that question, but I do know that now I think that my title of my next book, this is the first time I've done it this way. The title is broad enough. It's a really broad, I mean, it covers practically everything. So somewhere is any place, nowhere, here, and then cartographies, maps, and then home, and so for the first time, it's broad enough so that I can sort of write this and that and the other. And it, I mean, I haven't started shaping the book yet. I'm just like writing them and putting, but I think shaping a book is its own, aesthetic project. And it's very interesting to do that.
Mhm.
And you can occasionally you'll alter a poem to make it fit. Or you'll say, oh my God, I just need this poem. I need another purple poem. So you can write it once you're far into the process.
Got it. So, how does this process inform the way you go about the August Poetry Postcard Fest, which I think you've done 2 years now?
Yeah, this is my second year. No, I love it. Yeah, thank you. I love the, well, first of all, I am always off, I'm off schedule. It's like, I'm off schedule, but I do them all. And so what I do is I get up, I get up quite early in the morning just for, I've always done that. I used to get up and help my father bring in the cows. So so and then I have my coffee and write in my journal for an hour, just about nothing in particular. And then I will start doodling on the postcard poem. And so it just is part of everything else. It's just, it's a lot of fun. I love the part where you're writing it to someone. I think that's really a genius idea. And I love getting the postcards. And this year, I've only been for 2 years and you've been doing it for years and years, but this year I'm struck with, as opposed to last year, excuse me, where people are, they're doing very interesting things graphically this year, much more than last year. And they're also writing personal notes, which is really nice. And I think it's our time and everything. And so, yeah, so I love it. And it's just part of, any project that, that sparks generating work is like, I'm for it.
What attracted you to to Popo in the first place?
Just the idea, well, I don't know, just writing a poem every day. And the first year, which my first year was last year. And the first year, it was interesting to me that I'm not used to writing that short. And so the first year, and so it's actually almost like a form. And so the first year, I would, in my journal, when I was done my other writing, I would like draw the shape of the postcard on the page so I could stay within it. And then I gradually sort of got the form, so I don't have to do that anymore. So that's very interesting to me. And it's just like, I think it's very, I don't know, it's just, it's a lot of fun. And it's just, I think it's a great, the community that you've created is really, really nice. And I love, like, writing a poem to someone in Michigan, as well as in our, our own Northwest. So yeah.
So you talked a little bit about your method, and thank you for the kind words about the community. I appreciate that. You talked a little bit about your method, how you first wrote in your journal, like a box that you would be limited to, but then you started composing directly onto the card. And is there anything can you take us through the writing of a typical postcard? Is there such a thing as a typical postcard for you? See something in the newspaper that strikes you, or something going about your day, walking, seeing something? How does it work for you?
Oh, well, first of all, I always compose it in the journal because I'm concerned about writing neatly. And so when I finally get to the postcard, I only have one that I haven't sent. I have a bunch of them, but only one that I haven't sent. And I didn't do this the same way, but I can show you. I pasted over another postcard. And so I'm concerned about, I don't write neatly. If I just compose it on a postcard, you wouldn't be able to read it. My handwriting is too messy. I'm working on my handwriting. I have a calligraphy book and I'm kind of working on it. But I think since I'll use anything, but my challenge is, since I'm doing it early in the morning, often I'm doing it first or second thing after I get my journal writing done, that it's silent, it's dark, it could be raining. So my challenge is not to make the same poem every morning out of the same types of materials, because I'm usually not, it makes a huge difference when you write. If you want to write a whole different body of work, just do it in the evening.
After a couple of drinks.
After a couple of drinks, yes. Some of my worst works have been after.
Right before you go peeing in the garden.
That's right.
Do you send bonus cards out, or once you hit number 31, you're done?
Well, I tend to be late because I have all these projects going, and my goal is that, I mean, that's a great idea. No, I haven't yet. But last year, I forget, I forget what else I was doing, but I'm always doing a lot. And so I was late. So I determined that, well, this is going to be done by December, but it was way after August. So I decided, okay, these are all late, and so I put the word late in each one. And I thought that was fun. You want to hear some of them? Would you like to hear a late
I
poem?
would love to hear a late poem by Priscilla Long. Yes.
Okay, let's see here. Well, all right, this one isn't late, but this is Martha. That's this year. Martha, I'm not late yet. Oh yeah, I am late. Martha, this silent morning of the plague, I am reading Jung's Alchemy. I send by postcard this vision, a winged dragon. That's not late, but let me see if I can find a late one. Oh, here, I don't know if you can have cursing on your program.
Of course. I'm not on the radio anymore. Fuck that.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, here's one. This is called Story. The muse arrived at the garden gate too late. Nasturtiums had shut down orange. The gate was locked. The roses put up their noses. Shit, said this intruder from who knows where, and street poetry was born.
Those are lovely poems. What is it about the epistle form, do you think, that it makes those kinds of that it makes it its own unique form? Tell us about how it feels to you to write epistles.
Because you are right. Like, let me see if I can find. Because you are writing to another person, and I just think that in a sense, when we write, we are writing to another person. So this makes it explicit. And I don't know any of the people on my list, although I'm getting cards from, and more like the first year. And I think this has to do with you and your nurturing of it, and the relationships within this. So I think I really do, have to, to praise what you're doing here. But this year, and also I think it's a pandemic, but this year I'm getting a lot more. Oh, Priscilla, hello, I hope you're doing good, at the bottom, not as part of the poem. But I think whenever we write, we are writing. I mean, I think it helps to think you're writing to a person. It's like I took I'm not an actor at all, but I took an acting class once. And one piece of advice was to speak to look above the audience, but you speak to someone that's in your mind. You're talking to a person, because every person reading is a person, but not a person that bothers you or has opinions, or that that's going to kind of be interfering. So I think that this project makes that explicit, and that's an excellent, and it also, like, it's a web of interchanges, and they're all poetry. And it's the web, and that it goes out so far, I mean, I don't know, how far, I don't know how far, but it's just
Japan, Germany, New Zealand, UK. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think after your P poem goes viral, you're going to get a lot more cards in the future. I don't know. I just have a feeling about that.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure you're going to like them, but probably going to get a lot more. What advice would you have for someone who hears about the fest, goes to the website, popo.cards, and think this is interesting? What advice would you have for them?
Oh, I just think do it. Just do it. It's not difficult. You don't have to be good. I mean, you just like get rid of that bullshit. That's just bullshit. Just do it. Just
That's a testimonial if ever I've heard one. You don't have to be good. You too can do it.
yeah. Well, I mean,
But it's
really,
true.
this idea that you have to be good. I mean, how does that work? Everyone talks about, oh, one's inner critic and blah blah, and I'm not dumping on that conversation, but I am saying that we need to get rid of that that just like go away. Just don't just it's different from discernment, I would say.
Yeah.
It's just neurotic, and so yeah, you can just join in and write a few lines and put them in lines, and that will make a poem. And then gradually, if you're either, I mean, if you're a poet or not a poet, I don't know, gradually you learn how to work lines. And I think that adds to the pleasure then of it.
Editor's mind is neurosis, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I would distinguish between discernment and the what everyone. I mean, and I want to be careful not to act superior, but and I'm not. But I used to have, as I probably we all did at the beginning. I mean, I don't really know, but I used to have. I mean, actually, everyone doesn't, but people who were not particularly well brought up in this way, which includes me, we have this neurotic fear, and this neurotic fear, which is labeled the inner critic, is very destructive of creative energy and creative work, because the only way to do creative work is simply to do it, and then you learn more. You do it and you learn more, and you do it and you learn more, and you do it and you learn more, and so your discernment gets more and more sharp, over the decades. But the ability to just do it. And so at this point, I would say that I don't have an inner critic anymore. It's on permanent vacation. But that doesn't mean I didn't have it. But I just like, and part of that is I can do whatever I want. And one thing I want to do is the postcard poems. And I think everyone should do postcard poems.
I think I think that was a real masterful answer, and I think it shows your decades of experience as a teacher, the way you answered that and the way you articulated that. And I think that's really beautiful. To quote you, quoting HD, what good are your scribblings?
Oh, you want me to read that poem?
Well, you could read it, sure, and then answer the
Well,
question.
no, I think that given everything, we need beauty. And she wrote that fabulous book called Trilogy, I think it's called. Anyway, I mean, she wrote some of these poems. I mean, London was being bombed. I mean, bombs were falling around her. People were dead in the street around her. And yet at a certain point, the apple tree blooms. And I think that just as like intrinsic to us as all this violence and everything is this need for beauty and this need to recognize beauty. And so and it gives, existence this tremendous meaning that we perceive beauty and we can create beauty. Not that all poems are beautiful and they don't have to be, but we can create, art, and that gives meaning to life. It does, if you just lived in, I mean, if you just, I don't know, if you didn't have art, I don't know where you are. You're a lost soul. I mean, but to have art, and not only to be able to make poems, make things, but also to be immersed in a world where other people are making things, and in the history of the making, that the history, the Muriel Rukeyser, we have her because she spent her life making poems. So now we have her, and she's part of our consciousness. She's part of the way we see the world, and she helps us. I mean, I don't know, she doesn't put food on the table, but she helps our spirit tremendously.
A funny thing I was just thinking as you're describing that is you could be an amazing chef and feed people incredible dishes, but unless you write it down as a recipe, it's not going to last. And it will be the recipe, the writing, which lasts. That's very interesting to look at it that way. That's fantastic. Would you care to send us out with a poem?
Oh, sure. What poem? What shall I do?
I
Uh,
You could pick.
I'll do my latest postcard poem. How's that?
All right.
This is political.
Have you mailed it yet?
It's the one I wait.
Or
what
the one
is
you
it?
showed us?
It's the one, yeah. But I also have it on. I always write them also on on a paper, so I
Sure.
can keep them. Promises to keep. I promise. Oh, I have to explain that. So there's the Chuckanut Sandstone writing, or open mic, and so it was. I think it was. What day is it today? Friday? Is it Friday today? It was Wednesday night. The Carla Schaefer said, "Oh, we should write poems about promises." Okay, promises to keep. I promise to rise with the sun. I promise to brush and floss. I promise to write a postcard to you, wishing you well. I promise to vote. The orange bastard, mendacious, malicious, dangerous, has got to go. Promise me you will vote. Promise me.
Well, I'm glad there was no rhetoric in that.
No, it's just my perceptions. And I honestly was going to say malicious. I like mendacious, malicious, and dangerous. I think that sounds good together. Don't you?
It has a very good melopoeia. I agree with you on that.
And I was going to put fascistic, but I didn't have enough room.
Well, the postcard, you need bigger postcards next year. I think is what you do. Well, Priscilla, it's just been a delight to engage you. Thank you for all you do for the poetry community. Your reading at the Port Townsend Writers Conference in 2019 was it was a showstopper, and I'll never forget that. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the years at Red Sky and for all the work that you do as a teacher and writer. I'm very grateful to call you my friend.
And I you, indeed. Indeed.
Priscilla Long's new book is Holy Magic, and it's published by Moonpath Press.
Thanks.